Alright, so I'm sitting here tonight with my wife, who happens to be Iraqi. I'm a veteran of the war. I met her there. We married. Sitting here tonight, we had dinner with a couple of Iraqi friends that are here. They wanted to come over and be with somebody that can make them feel a little bit safe and feel a little better about the situation that's going on. So I felt compelled to make this video tonight and just tell a few stories from, I guess, a pissed off veteran's perspective about what's going on with this new administration that I hope many of my veteran brothers do not support, particularly this executive order on the Muslim ban. He can call it what he wants, but it is essentially a ban on all Muslims. So as I was sitting here tonight, speaking with our friends and hearing my wife tell the story of how her father was killed, and then having her friend tell the story of how her father was killed, it just made me realize that these are human beings looking to get away from a situation that it's not good for anybody. And we as Americans, particularly we veterans, need to understand that they are just human beings like the rest of us. Unfortunately, we have an administration that doesn't see them as humans, sees them as somebody else who's just a perpetual threat to us. I could say that when I was in Iraq, I met some of the nicest, most hospitable people that I'd ever seen or came across, especially considering the fact that I was an invader in their land. For them to go out of their way and bring me food while I stood out on the street corner on a daily basis, sitting down with a little girl, learning my 1, 2, 3s in Arabic and teaching her English numbers. These are people. They're not just Muslims. They're not just people that don't deserve the opportunities that we have just because they didn't happen to have the fortune of being born here. And I think that's a great travesty on what this nation stands for. I think that that 20% of people that really believe in what Trump is doing is just as big of a problem as he is, and you have no place in the country that I fought for, not in my United States. But I know you're going to exist, and you're always going to be there. And it's unfortunate, but it is the case. But I just wanted to tell a short story of a young man. When I was in Iraq, I was part of a 5-man squad that was responsible for the security of the Ministry of Health. I was there for the first year, the initial invasion, and the ultimate collapse of one of the most secular nations in the region. One day, me and my guys were about to leave the Ministry of Health, and as I looked down the road, I see 2 young men coming towards us. One was on crutches with one leg. The other was just walking beside him, and they were kind of rushing down the street to us. Once they arrived, I asked them what they were looking for, what they needed, and the young man with one leg said something in Arabic to his compatriot, and he translated for me and basically said, "I'm his cousin. He was a soldier in the Iraqi army. He laid down his weapons when the invasion started, and he was on his way home, and he stepped on a cluster bomb, and that's how he lost his leg." I was kind of shocked at that he would come to an American outpost and ask for help, knowing that that's what happened. So I asked, how old is he? He was, I think, 19 or 20. And I said, well, what can I do to help out? I mean, what do you guys need? And he said that they heard on the radio that if they were to come to the Ministry of Health, they could get some kind of assistance, a wheelchair, prosthetics. I was like, well, I personally don't have anything I can help you with. I'm very sorry to hear about that. Then I remembered, hey, we have wheelchairs in the auditorium where our forward operating base was. So I told one of my guys to jump in our little hot-wired Toyota Corolla and go back to the Saddam Auditorium and get one of those wheelchairs that was stashed away in a corner not being used and bring it back. I sat there and I tried to relate with this young man, and I just admired his courage and his lack of hatred towards me. My nation had invaded his country, dropped that cluster bomb that he wound up losing his leg from. And yet he came to me with desperation, tears in his eyes, and swallowed his pride and asked me to help him. Yet we as a nation now are not willing to help those like that young man and like that little girl Zena that taught me my Arabic numbers 1 through 10. It's just a sad day. It's the first time I felt ashamed to be an American. And you know, I know there's many other veterans out there like me that have had those stories of real human interaction that didn't allow our nation to paint an entire people as our enemy. We were able, as individuals, to sift through all that and see who were the enemies and who were not. And even if they were the enemy, you have to understand we were in their country. Nobody asked us to go there. We would fight the same here. And I never held that against anyone. Now, terrorism, yeah, it's a problem. And it's just going to be amplified by these actions that Donald Trump's taken. And no, he's not President Trump in my eyes. I do not respect him one bit. I have the least amount of respect for him or his, brain children, Steve Bannon and that office rocker, former General Mike Flynn. You may appeal to that 20% that believes your conspiracy theories and that white supremacy is the only way to go in this country. But I don't. And I know that I am the majority. I just want to say to all of those that are Iraqi, Syrian, Libyan, Sudanese, Somalian, Yemeni, Iranians, that this administration does not speak for me. It does not speak for the majority of my countrymen or women. And that I am here for any of my brothers and sisters, whether they be Arab, African, Persian, it doesn't matter, or American. This is a travesty what's going on in our nation. I couldn't sit here and hold it all in anymore. The Middle East is a place, a region that is very near and dear to me. And we look back in a historical perspective on where the rise of terrorism came from, where Islamic extremism started, and it can all be traced back to Western powers imposing their will in the region, whether it be England, France, Italy, or the United States, or Russia for that matter. It all goes back to that. These were very high cultured regions, very high cultured peoples. Religion only played a part in their personal lives. It wasn't something that was widespread. In the 50s and 60s, these countries were wearing mini skirts and bebopping just like the Americans here. And when they had nothing else to go to but their religion, and with no support other than for our own selfish gains, did they turn towards the West. because we never made it clear to them that their interests were first and foremost in our minds at any of our forays into their nations. And that's the hypocrisy that we have become as America. We talk about being a leader in human rights around the world and the most free and democratic society, yet we align ourselves with those that are completely not that, and we don't hold them accountable for any of their actions. And I'll name them here: Saudi Arabia being the one. Their ideological version of Islam, the Wahhabism, that is what is taking hold in these extremists. They have spread that. They have promoted that type of ideological thinking. This, Khalifa, this bring back the caliphate, that comes from them. It doesn't come from your average Iraqi citizen, your Syrian, your Lebanese. That's not where these ideas came from. They started in Saudi Arabia. They were promoted and paid for to be spread throughout the region by the Saudis. Yet we align ourselves with them for our own selfish needs as a nation. So yeah, the Arab world looks at us and says, look at these hypocrites. Saudi Arabia is cutting off people's hands, not allowing women to drive, think for themselves, go out in public without their significant other who happens to be a male, must be covered in hijab. That's not their choice. Yet we talk about supporting human rights around the world. And let's just move over to the other issue in that region. The Zionists that are ruling Israel right now is right-wing and as racist and prejudiced as you can get. And they call themselves a democracy. Yet Arabs under that democracy are second-class citizens. They have encroached on Palestinian land, prior to even 1967. Because in my opinion, when those borders were drawn, they should have been given proportionate amount of land for the proportion of the population that they had. Yet we've allowed them to continue to build settlements, and then President Obama leaves by withholding a vote on this settlement issue. Well, the rest of the world already knew that what the Zionists in Israel are doing is against the human rights of the Palestinian people, the true owners of that land, the true farmers, the cultivators of Palestine, or historically Judea and Samaria. Yet we don't hold them accountable. Even this president here is talking about breaking years of international laws and UN resolutions by moving our embassy to Jerusalem. Basically, in a de facto manner, accepting that Jerusalem is the capital of the Israeli state, which it is not. It's long been said that that would be an international city, not to be named as a capital of either of the two states, which will never be. We know that's the whole point of all of this settlement building and stealing of Palestinian land and violating of their rights. Yet the Zionists, get away with it. And why? Because they're this so-called democracy. What's democratic about oppression, apartheid? Nobody was calling South Africa a democracy. Yet, because of Hasbara campaigns and our guilt of turning away Jews in the beginnings of World War II, we've allowed it to continue. Yet I would guarantee that none of those European Jews that were turned away from U.S. shores would stand behind what these Zionist governments have been doing in Israel and how they have been violating Palestinians' rights for years. And it's not a religious issue, it is a political issue. You're talking about a land where there were farmers, both Jew and Muslim and Christian, There were Arabs living peacefully with Jew and Arab Christian neighbors, babysitting one another's kids, in many cases being family members through marriage and by birth. Yet we allowed Europeans with their high culture to call it their homeland and go in there and basically steal the land. Well, they paid for it, but they paid for the land and took it right out from underneath the feet of the peoples that were living there. Even the Jews that were there, they were seen as low culture. They didn't have their European sensibilities that they had. So, for us to even take the high road as a country, it just doesn't stand anymore. Our moral superiority has no legs in this world we live in. And until we accept and acknowledge our mistakes, it never will. Yet, we have elected an idiot. And yes, an idiot. He's very good at manipulating the ignorant. Because believe me, those are the ones that voted for him. That 20% of ignorant fools that have bought into the idea that some minority or some immigrant has taken a job that they wouldn't even do in their most desperate days, so they can afford to buy those tomatoes or those strawberries. Because if they were to do that job, they would demand twice the pay, better treatment, and it would increase the cost. So I don't want to hear that crap. And if you really believe that a minority is taking your job because there's a war on your white supremacy, you're out of your mind. You need to do a little history research. Look back and see how we've treated the minorities in this country, and see how it's happening again, because you let your own selfish desires get in the way of making the right choice for the greater good of our nation and the world. And for those of you that did vote for Trump just because you despised Hillary, hey, let me tell you, I was not a Hillary supporter. The Democratic Party shot themselves in the foot. You buried Bernie, and Bernie was the only guy that could beat this idiot that you guys have allowed to come in there. So yes, as a member of the Democratic Party, and I've been registered as a Democrat since I began voting, very disappointed. And yes, it is their fault. But was I going to take that anger that I have for the Democratic Party and allow that to have me make an irrational vote to put a Nazi, a fascist idiot in the office of presidency? No. I made the right choice and I voted for Hillary. But for those of you that did let your anger get the best of you because she screwed Bernie over, I hope you feel very guilty for what you've done, and I hope you are more aware of the repercussions of your vote now, because you give a dictator an inch and they take everything. And with conspiracy theorists, white supremacists as his lead advisors, hey, you just better hope that the Republicans in the House and Senate don't toe the party line. They stand up for what's right, and most of these idiotic executive orders won't get passed. Otherwise, you're going to have to reap what you sow, and there will be growth in terrorism now, whether it be Islamic or otherwise. If this is about stopping terrorism, why don't we start right here in America? I would say start scrubbing the subscribers and the viewer list of InfoWars and Breitbart. There's quite a few terrorists in those two lists, I guarantee it. But they don't happen to be non-white Christians. I'm sure that has a problem. Or that is a problem with this current administration. Um, you know, I don't know how many more of these videos I'm going to do, but I do feel obligated to speak out and educate people. If you can sit there and see the death and destruction going on in Syria, which, by the way, is probably as much, if not more, being caused by these so-called moderate rebels that we decided to arm, who were not moderates at all, who were just you know, waiting for reasons to join al-Nusra and ISIL. And you know, there's already reports being done. You know, Gabby, oh, what's her name? One of my former veteran sisters, who's now a congressman, who went to Syria and came back and reported that the people in Syria are saying that no, these were not moderates. They were never moderates. They just needed some motivation to move to the other side and fight against Assad. That Assad's not the problem there. He's not the cause of the death and destruction. Which, you know, hey, I don't know. I haven't been there. But I can tell you that, you know, a dictator with control and order is far better than tens of thousands of terrorists running amok, creating unrest. We'll go more into why the Syrian unrest is going on in another video, but you can guarantee that it has to do with U.S. interest, and I'll talk about that, which has been talked about in many other places as well. I know Jimmy Dore, one of the Young Turks, has talked about the pipeline. You know, Robert Kennedy exposed you know, some papers that the CIA, you know, has been trying to cause unrest in that region, particularly Syria, to have a pipeline built to cut off Russian oil supplies to Europe and, you know, try to cripple their economy. So, but we'll get into that a little more in another episode. My hope is that I won't have to report on this idiot doing anything else irrational, but I can tell you that if he continues this ban on Muslims, that Americans are not going to be safe. They're going to be targets anywhere else in the world where there are Muslim majorities. The soldiers that are on the ground in Iraq and these other places that he's you know, brought these bans on, they're not any safer for his executive order. This is just going to make Muslims that were on the edge, on the fringe here, that felt desperate anyways, that were trying to do the right thing, now we're going to make them feel even more marginalized. And I hope that they don't take that extra step, but it's not going to be hard to push them over the edge now, because we have a administration that has openly admitted he doesn't care about them. He's a xenophobe from the word go, and there's nothing good that can come from him. Like I said, in my opinion, he's just a piece of shit. He's not a president. He's never been presidential, and that's why 40% of voting Americans voted for him, because you didn't want somebody who's seen presidential. Yo, if you put another articulate aristocrat in there, we're just going to get the same old thing. Well, you know, when it comes to a dictator or status quo, I'm going to take status quo. I'm sorry. We have to be the change that we want. So hopefully this has woken the Democratic Party's eyes up, and they will go a little more progressive, since we do know from polling that most Americans are more progressive. We don't support Muslim bans. We don't support overturning Roe v. Wade. We don't support the marginalization of immigrants that are already here. We don't support building walls to separate ourselves from our neighbors. Um, it's just a sad day. It's just even hard to articulate how angry, upset, and unproud of being an American I am today. But I am proud of those that have came out to the airports to show their solidarity with those refugees and immigrants that are trying to get here and become good Americans and escape the carnage that in some shape, form, or fashion we have helped cause. It's the least we can do is to allow them in. And just on National Holocaust Remembrance Day, he comes out with this. It's like, obviously he is not a student of our history. You know, there's just nothing else you could say. I mean, he's just an orange-faced buffoon. I mean, like my wife told her friend tonight, don't worry, you shouldn't fear a guy who looks like the ass of a baboon. That was hilarious. It was funnier in Arabic, but anyhow. So I hope to put out some more videos coming up. The Middle East, like I said, is a region that's near and dear to me. The hope is that I will kind of take you through a modern Middle East history lesson and kind of connect the dots as to why we have issues with terrorism today and why we are seen as the hypocrites of the world when it comes to human rights, especially in that region. I think 30 minutes has been long enough for the night, so I will sign off by saying peace be with all of you. Arab, Muslim, Christian, Jew, American, white, black, Mexican, whatever. You know, we're all brothers in the human race, and that's all I care about. Humans deserve to be treated as humans. It shouldn't be based on the fortune of where you're born. So I stand with you, and please, if there's any subjects or things you'd like me to kind of look into, to kind of go over in any of the future videos, please leave them in the comments on this one, and I will be happy to address them. So this is Sean Blackwell, one pissed off vet that hates Donald Trump, signing off.